أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين سيدنا محمد عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وعملا صالحا متقبلا ورزقا حلالا طيبا يا أكرم الأكرمين وبعد. So this is the fourth session of the series of the noble household, the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first time we talked about the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. The second time we talked about Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the last Monday, we talked about Al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, the grand son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today we are going to talk about Al-Husayn, Al-Hasan's brother. And as I probably said last Monday, that we always talk about them both at the same time. Like if you find even the books of hadith that talk about the virtues of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they mention Al-Hasan, they most of the time mention Al-Husayn with him. In the hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is talking about the characteristics or the position that one of them got and one of them has, usually the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would combine them both in the same hadith. So Al-Husayn is Al-Hasan's brother, and he's younger, he's 1 year younger than Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. So he's the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. And Rayhanatuhu is that beautiful, sweet smelling flower, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called him, and Al-Hasan, his brother. He is the one who resembled the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. We see Al-Hasan resembled the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Anas ibn Malik, the very close companion to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "I didn't see anyone who resembles the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Al-Hasan." And then Al-Husayn was also resembling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He looked like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but in a different way. So these said Al-Hasan looked like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his face and probably his shoulders, while Al-Husayn looked like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the rest of his body. He was born in the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Al-Madinah, in the 4th year of the Hijrah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam slaughtered a ram for him, as exactly he did for his brother Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. So whatever he offered Al-Hasan sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also offered Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu. He was born in the 4th year of the Hijrah, 4 years after the immigration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about them both, "Huma rayhanataya min ad-dunya," as I said, they are my 2 sweet smelling flowers in this life. He is one of the 2 chiefs of the youth of the Jannah, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Sayyida shababi ahl al-Jannah," the masters, the chiefs, the leaders of the youth of the Jannah. Their mother Fatima radiallahu anha is the leader of the women of the Jannah, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Al-Hasan was different than Al-Husayn. If you remember from last session, Al-Hasan was very probably very quiet, very probably he was very merciful about others to an extent that even if people violate sometimes his rights, and sometimes people transgress and oppress his rights, he would just let things go. He would forgive everyone radiallahu anhu. He like gave up on his own right that he believed he should get of the caliphate or the khilafah after his dad. And even though just to forgive others and to of course to protect Muslims from falling into a big fitna, he just decided that he will going to step down from his position as a khalifa and just let the other companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam take the position. Al-Husayn was a little bit different than this. We talked about the story of Al-Hasan last time, but Al-Husayn was a little bit more harsh, a little bit more, in a positive way, of course, a little bit more aggressive, probably, a little bit more stronger and more aggressive in the decisions he took, more than his brother Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. And there's a beautiful story that says that Al-Hasan told Al-Husayn, his brother, once that I wish I have that brave heart such of yours. And then Husayn responded to him in a beautiful way, and he said, and I wish I have your eloquence. I wish I can have this great skills that you have in public speaking and in giving speeches. So Al-Husayn was born in Medina in the 4th year after the Hijrah. And he was raised, of course, in his family and with the supervision of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked about the tarbiyah they got from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam last Monday. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died in the 11th year of the Hijrah. So basically, he lived around 6 years with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then his mom, Fatima radiallahu anha, was the first one of the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pass away. So she passed away a few months after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now he's only living with his dad. He was very famous to be a very righteous person. He used to offer a lot of ibadat. It was narrated that he offered and he performed 25 hajj in his life. We said that Al-Hasan made or performed 15 hajj. He offered 25 hajj. He went to hajj 25 times, radiallahu anhu. All of them he went on foot. He did not actually take any ride to go to Mecca and to perform the hajj. He was also known to be a mujahid. During the caliphate of Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, he participated in jihad when the Sahaba were conquering parts of Africa. He was participating with the army there under the leadership of one of the Sahaba. His name was Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh, and he also participated in the conquest of Jordan, which is like a kind of a state in Iran nowadays. And he was there with one of the companions under the leadership of the companion. His name is Sa'id ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. So he participated in a lot of jihad during his lifetime. And at the year of the 35 after the Hijrah, he witnessed the bay'ah of his dad. When people gave the bay'ah, bay'ah means the pledge of commitment and the pledge of approval that the community approves the Khalifa to be their leader. So when everybody was sharing this pledge with Ali ibn Abi Talib, he witnessed that, Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu. And then he moved with his dad to Al-Kufa because Sayyidina Ali lived in Al-Kufa for a bit until he was killed there. And then he witnessed the fitna and the problems that happened between some of the Sahaba and between Muslims in general. And he attended the 2 big battles that happened between the Muslims during the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. And then he attended the fitna of the Khawarij, who attacked Ali radiallahu anhu and made takfir against him and against so many of the Sahaba. And all those fitna, he lived all that full experience with his dad radiallahu anhu. And he lived until his dad was killed, and that was in the 40 year after the Hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Husayn had this very beautiful special position with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day he was walking in the masjid, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw him coming. So he told the companions with him, whoever wants to see the leader, the chief of the youth of the Jannah, he should look at this person. So everybody looks, and they found out that Al-Husayn is walking in the mosque. He used to play with him when he was a little kid. And imagine the Prophet ﷺ saying that, and he's like probably 4 or 5 years old, right? And he's saying, this will be the leader of the youth of the Jannah. And he used to play with him, sallallahu. And he said in a beautiful hadith, Husaynun sibtum min al-asbat. And the sibt is the Arabic word that means the grandson from the daughter's side. So my daughter's son, I call him sibt, and my son's son, I call him hafid. They can be used interchangeably in Arabic language, but it's more popular to be about the daughter's son. So he said, Husaynun sibtum min al-asbat. He said, Husayn is my grandson from a daughter. And it also implies that he's going to have a big family, because some scholars said the word sibt sometimes means a tribe or a big family. And then he said, Man ahabbani falyuhibba Husaynan. Whoever loves me, he should love Husayn. And he also said in another hadith, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, أحب الله من أحب حسينا. Allah loves whoever loves Husayn, radiallahu anhu. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu also reported that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, من أحب الحسن والحسين فقد أحبني. Whoever loves Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn, then he loves me. And whoever hates them, then he hates me. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. Also, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was praying, and then Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn would come always and climb on top of the shoulders and the back of the Prophet ﷺ when he's in his sujood. So some people tried to stop them from doing this, not to distract the Prophet ﷺ in praying, and the Prophet made a kind of like an indication that just leave them alone, do not prevent them from coming to me. Then after he's done his prayer, he put them both on his legs, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he said, "Man ahabbani falyuhibba hadayn." Whoever loves me, he should love these two kids. So a lot of the hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam used this beautiful word of love about Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn too. Sometimes Al-Husayn himself suitably mentioned in a hadith. Sometimes, a lot of times, actually both are mentioned. So what happened is, now their dad has died. And then we mentioned the story last time that Al-Hasan took the Khilafah first for a few months, and then he decided to save the fitna and to save Muslims from bloodshed. And he decided to give up on his right and to basically step down from this position. And he told Muawiyah that, you know what, I'm going to give you my bay'ah, my pledge that you are the Khalifa, and let's just settle down this matter, and let's just save Muslims from a big fitna that would have happened. Al-Husayn was against this opinion, and he told Al-Hasan, do not do this. Do not step down. Do not leave your position. We know you are worthy of this. Do not leave it. But Al-Hasan kept insisting that I'm going to do this, and he convinced his brother until Al-Husayn was convinced. And then things were a little bit settled after the Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu stepped down from this position. And we said last time also that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us a nubu'ah, gave us a prophecy about this. And he said, Nabni hada sayyid. He said, my son is a sayyid, is a master, is a chief. وعسى الله تبارك وتعالى أن يصلح به بين فئتين من المسلمين. I hope that Allah may reconcile two parties of my community by means of him. So the Prophet ﷺ, and that was way before, probably more than 30 years earlier than this problem happened, and that was way after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. So after this situation, and Al-Husayn was a little bit okay with what Al-Hasan did, and he calmed down, and then his relationship with Sayyidina Muawiyah, the other companion who took the Khilafah from Al-Hasan, he was on good terms with him to a big extent, and he accepted some gifts from Sayyidina Muawiyah. Sayyidina Muawiyah used to respect him, used to sometimes he would consult him on some things, and things were generally okay until after Al-Hasan died, or was killed. As we said last time, he was poisoned. After he died, Sayyidina Muawiyah took a little bit of a strange decision by asking people to give a pledge to his son to be the next Khalifa. And some people accepted, and some people did not. And one of those people obviously did not accept was Al-Husayn. He felt that this is actually too much, right? We already accepted the first time. I agreed with my brother to step down and to give it to you, but now I cannot take this anymore. One of the other companions who did not accept this was Abdullah ibn Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and the son, of course, of one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And he actually thought that I should be the Khalifa, not this person, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Al-Husayn thought the same thing. Not that they were fighting over power or fighting over leadership and positions, but it just didn't make sense to them that this really doesn't make sense. Those people are more qualified. Those people are more eligible to be the Khalifas at all levels, right? There's no even comparison between these two, for example, and Yazid ibn Muawiyah, the son of Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So Al-Husayn decided that, no, I'm not going to give this pledge to the son of Muawiyah. And then there were some heated discussions that happened, a lot of negotiations that happened, and Sayyidina Muawiyah is still alive. So things were just heated, but the actual problem did not start yet. And then Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu died. And his son actually took over, and he became the Khalifa. And Al-Husayn refused to give him a pledge. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr refused to give him a pledge, and some other companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Al-Husayn decided that I'm going to revolt against this, right? I'm not going to accept this anymore. And he got more encouraged by some letters he received from the people of Iraq that we have you back, we're going to support you. We have a lot of people who are ready just to give you a bay'ah. You are deserving this more than him. And so he got a bit more encouraged that now actually the public opinion is supporting me somehow, and I have a lot of supporters, so I should go and basically get my right back. That was his mindset, radiyallahu anhu. When we look at this point, even the Sahaba who were still alive, they had different conflicting opinions about should we support Al-Husayn or not. Yes, there was almost a consensus that of course Al-Husayn is more eligible to be the Khalifa, right? But the thing is, like, how much is the risk to ask him or to support him actually to just like, yeah, you should go and fight for your right. So the Sahaba had multiple opinions, which was actually something interesting. And this is one of the most controversial parts of our history, that, yeah, it was a very, very sensitive, like, part or period of our history. And even the Sahaba themselves, in measuring the all the circumstances, were of different opinions. So for example, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he was still alive. I don't talk about now big names of the scholars of the Sahaba, not only just the Sahaba. They are among the biggest scholars of the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Abbas went to Al-Husayn and he begged him, please do not do anything. Do not leave Mecca. He was in Mecca at that time. He said, please do not go to Iraq. Do not listen to those people. And he found that Al-Husayn is stubborn and no, I'm going to go. He said, like, at least just wait until this Hajj season is over and you can meet with some of those people here in Mecca and listen to them, and you make sure that they are actually going to support you. I don't want you just to follow some random letters and random people that are sending you some messages. And then Husayn kept saying, no, I'm going to leave Mecca and I'm going to go and get my right. So Abdullah ibn Abbas told him, Wallahi, I think you are going to be killed. And he actually told him, Wallahi, I can see that you are going to be killed in the middle of your family, exactly as Uthman was killed in the middle of his family, radiallahu anhu. And subhanAllah, since Uthman was killed, all those problems did not stop, right? It was the problem started since then. The very first problem was about how can we take revenge for Uthman, and it was like a huge gate of fitna that opened since then. So he said, like, we've been in this problem and this fitna since Uthman was killed. And he said, actually, we did not take the revenge for Uthman yet, and now we are going to be killed too. So what are we gaining? What are we getting out of this? فَإِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. This is what he said. He said, like, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Abdullah ibn Abbas is telling Al-Husayn that. Al-Husayn told him, no, I'm going to leave. And it was a very long conversation. And then Al-Husayn told him, you know what? Even if I'm going to be killed, I would rather be killed somewhere else. I don't want to be killed in Mecca. It's a sacred city. I don't want to fight in Mecca. So Abdullah ibn Abbas said, like, fine. Like he said, Wallahi, if I know that if I keep discussing it with you, you will be convinced, I would have discussed it with you more, but I know you will never be convinced. And he left him. So this is one example of a Sahaba. A lot of Sahaba talked to Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, by the way. Another one was Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab. And again, think of the names that are talking to Al-Husayn, right? Abdullah ibn Umar, one of the greatest scholars of the Sahaba. He told him, he also begged him, please do not leave Mecca. Do not go. Do not do this. Do not go for this revolution that you want to start. He said, the Prophet ﷺ was given the choice between the dunya and the hereafter, and he chose the hereafter. And you are from him. You are a piece of the Prophet. You are one of his family. You are his grandson. And I'm telling you, you're not going to get the dunya. This is what Abdullah ibn Umar said. You're not going to get the dunya. And then he hugged him and he cried, radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Umar. And he told him, like, he gave him salam, like, he felt that you are going to be killed. You are going to die for this. And after he left, Abdullah ibn Umar said, غَلَبَنَا بِخُرُوجِهِ. He said, like, we couldn't prevent him from leaving. We knew, like, he insisted even though we tried. And he said he left even though he saw what happened to his dad and his brother. Like, he saw his dad was killed and his brother was poisoned. And he saw how people let his dad down, how people let his brother down. So he shouldn't have gone. He shouldn't have went to this very risky. It's a kind of a suicide. That's what Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas were telling him. They said one of the women, her name was Amra. She sent him a letter and she said, I heard Aisha radiallahu anha saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يُقْتَلُ الْحُسَيْنُ بِأَرْضِ بَابِلٍ. I heard that Aisha narrated from the Prophet that Al-Husayn will be killed in Babylon, which is a city in Iraq. So you are going to be killed. And he read that letter and he said, even though, let it be. He said, even if I'm going to be killed, let it be. Not that he doesn't care, not that he is committing suicide. He just believes that I cannot accept that oppression. That was his opinion. It was not a suicide. I know I use this word metaphorically, but of course that was not a suicide. He was just a free person and a very brave person to an extent that I cannot accept oppression. I cannot see dhulm happening and I stay silent about this. That doesn't mean that the rest of the companions are wrong, but I'm saying it's really not easy to say who was right in this situation, right? And I'm going to at the end to share some reflections on how do we view this entire problem. But at the end, it's really such a controversial thing that it's really not easy to say like who is right and who's wrong in terms of should he do that or not between him and Yazid ibn Muawiyah, just to be very clear, because this person obviously he didn't have right to dig the Khilafah this way, right? Everyone knows that Husayn was right, but the thing is, should he actually go ahead and fight for his right or not? That was the biggest and the most difficult question that the Sahaba were facing at that time. And you can tell that actually other Sahaba were supporting him. So Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, one of the other companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the Abadila, one of the four Abdullahs actually, who shared his opinion with Abdullah ibn Abbas too, radiallahu anhu. One man came to him and he asked him if I should go with Al-Husayn and support him or not. So now we just shared the opinion of Abdullah ibn Abbas, this one opinion, then Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab, this is another opinion, right? And they both were against this. While Abdullah ibn Amr, and again, those were called the Abadila, the Abdullahs, which are like among the very famous scholars of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one man went to Abdullah ibn Amr and he asked him, like, should I go with Al-Husayn and support him? And then Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, he said, yes, of course, you should go with him. And then he gave an interesting justification for this. He said, if you seek in dunya, you'll find it with him. And if you seek in akhirah, you'll find it with him too. Which implies that he's going to get his right. And if he gets his right back, if he gets actually that right of being the leader of Muslims, now you are going to win with him. And if he gets killed and you get killed with him, he was on the haqq, so you're going to get the akhirah, so you're going to be a shaheed. That was the view and the ijtihad of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. And Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, one of the great biographers, he commented on this and he said, this is a dalil that Abdullah ibn Amr thinks that Al-Husayn was right in his decision in leaving. And again, when they say he was right, they mean he's right in leaving Mecca and going to fight for his right. Again, I cannot stress that enough. So he took his decision and he decided to leave. And when he received, as I said, these letters from Iraq, he was actually more encouraged to do that. And people kept telling him, you just come to us, we're going to support you. We have a lot of fighters and a lot of soldiers here are just like at your service. And he was not also just like going for that blindly. He sent his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib first to check on these matters and to take on his behalf the pledge from those people, the bay'ah from those people. So when Muslim went there, his cousin, he did not come back and he didn't hear back from him. And he kept waiting and he didn't hear back at all until he doubted that probably they did something bad to a Muslim. So he decided to keep moving until he reaches Iraq. And until he was very close to a place called Al-Qadisiyah that is very close to Iraq, he met with a person who told him, please do not go to Iraq, go back, things are not good there. And he told him that your cousin Muslim was killed by the leader, by the leader of the city of Al-Basra and the city of Al-Kufa, was appointed by the Caliph who was Yazid. So he tried to go back. He said, like, I'm going to go back to Mecca. But the rest of the people with him actually said, no, we have to keep marching to Al-Iraq or to specifically Basra and Kufa until we fight and take the revenge for Muslim for our cousin. So he considered at that point to, okay, probably I should go back. But the people told him, you know what? No, not anymore. Not after they killed our cousin. We have to go and take our revenge. So he kept moving until he reached this very famous area that is called Karbala. And he only had 45 horsemen and 100 soldiers. Like they used to count the people in the armies, or like a small faction in this way, that there are the fighters who are on horses, faris. So he had 45, like basically fully armed fighters, and 100 soldiers, like the lower rank in the armies. And he had his family. So he had his sons, he had some of his sisters, like he had his family with him. And he has also like a kind of a large number of kids as well. And when he reached there, he knew that the people of Kufa have actually let him down. No one came to him. So all those letters he received were basically probably not 100% fake, but some of them were fake, of course, and some of them people just got scared, and they got a lot of threats from the leader of the city that if you actually go and join Al-Husayn, you'll be killed. So at that point, he met with the army that the leader of Al-Basra and Al-Kufa was preparing to receive Al-Husayn with. And this army was consisting of 4,000 fighters, fully armed. And again, Husayn has 145 people. plus his family. And at that point, and this is one also of the very, very controversial points of the story, because there are a lot of conflicting and contradicting versions about this story, that most of them revolve around the idea that there were a lot of negotiations back and forth between the two parties. And at the beginning, the group that represents Yazid, they told him, you need just to listen, you need to obey, give the pledge to Yazid, and go back to Mecca, and I'm going to leave you alone. And then Husayn said, no, I will never do that, but I don't want to fight too. So what I'm proposing is, let me go and meet with Yazid himself, with the new quote-unquote caliph, and let me talk to him, and we discuss this matter together. They said, no, you have to talk to us. So this is one or two versions of the story. But again, there were a lot of versions about like things getting heated, a lot of very heated discussions, a lot of negotiations back and forth. But what is agreed upon among all those stories is the group that represents Yazid, the bigger group, those are the ones who initiated the fight. So they attacked Al-Husayn out of a sudden. And at the very beginning, they killed one of his sons who was just 3 years old. One person threw his arrow and he killed a 3-year-old baby. And he was, one of the versions said, Al-Husayn was actually carrying him and he found the arrow killing his son in front of him, and his body was covered by the blood of his son. So he put him aside and he got up and he started fighting. And he was very famous to be very strong, physically very strong, and a very famous fighter, radiallahu anhu. He was very, very strong. And he kept fighting and fighting until he was killed in this very famous incident on the Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, in the 61st year after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He died and he had 33 wounds in his body. He got a lot of arrows, he got a lot of stabs, and he kept fighting and fighting. And he killed actually like a large number of those people. A lot of his family were killed. Most of the men who were with him, they were actually killed. And a big number of his family said that around 17 family members were actually killed, including 4 brothers of him, other than Al-Hassan, who already died before, of course. So he had another 4 brothers who were killed as well. So he lost all those people. And also one of the stories says that they actually cut his head. They split his head from his body. And they took it to Yazid in the very famous story, and it's a very known in history. I know it's a very painful part of our history, and it's a very controversial as well, because they will find hundreds of versions and narrations about this story. But what I'm saying is what is basically most of the versions are actually agreeing on. And they took the rest of his family, including the woman and the kids, to Yazid, the new caliph. And when he saw them, one of the narrations said that he didn't actually want him to be killed. And that was just like an improvisation that happened by his appointed leader of the army, right? He takes that sin, of course, still, but he didn't actually want to kill him. He's just like, go and talk to him and try to force him to go back to Mecca and force him to give a pledge to me. So he encouraged him to be violent, but not to that extent. This is what one of the versions says, at least Allahu A'lam what happened. So when he saw them, one of the versions said he felt a little bit sad. And he looked at the woman and the kids and they're crying. And it was a very tough moment. And he said, like, I just wanted you to listen. I didn't want to do this to you. كنت أرضى طاعتكم بدون قتله. It's like, I just wanted you to be obedient. And I didn't want to kill Al-Husayn. So Sukayna, bint Husayn, his daughter, radiallahu anha, one of the Al-Bayt, one of the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Husayn's daughter, she looked at him and said, Ya Yazid, abanatu Rasulillahi sabaya? Are you going to take the grandsons, the granddaughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as slaves? Because that was the tradition back then. If like when you fight in a battle and you get captives, are you going to take us as captives, as female slaves? So he said, like, yabnata akhi, he said, like, oh, my niece, like he was trying to be nice to her. That, wallahi, what happened is probably more tough on me than it's more tough on you. And he started swearing and saying bad things about Ubaydullah ibn Yazid, the leader of the army who killed Al-Husayn and killed all those people. And then it's also reported in history that he was actually nice to the rest of the family, and he hosted them and he gave them money and things, and he tried to be nice to them as if he's trying just like to make up for what happened. And of course nothing he would do that would make up for this horrible incident that happened, that all Muslims felt very, very like hurt and pained by this horrible story. Even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his life, He knew this will happen. He knew that his grandson will be killed. And one day, Salama radiallahu anha, he was at her house, one of his wives, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our mother, Salama. And she said, Jibreel was coming down to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give him wahi, and the Prophet asked me, do not let anyone in the house because I'm busy with Jibreel. And she said, I found Husayn, and again, he was a very little kid. He came, he tried to get in, and we didn't allow him, so he started crying. So she said, I let him in. He's a little kid. And when he walked in, the Prophet ﷺ took him and he put him on his legs while he's still talking to Jibreel alayhi salam. So Jibreel looked at the son and he said, your ummah will kill this boy. And the Prophet ﷺ was surprised and he said, they will kill him while they are still mu'mins, like they're still believers, and they were going to kill him, like as if that was a shocking thing for him to know. And Jibreel said, yes. And Jibreel showed him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the place where Al-Husayn will be killed. So he knew that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Salama radiallahu anha knew that. Even on that day when Al-Husayn was killed, radiallahu anha, one lady said, I entered Salama's house, I visited her and I found her crying. And then I said, why are you crying? She said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ yesterday in my dream. And the Prophet ﷺ passed away years ago. That I saw the Prophet ﷺ yesterday in my dream. And I saw dust on his beard and hair. And I said, Ya Rasulullah, what's going on? Why are you looking like this? And he said, I just witnessed the murder of right now. And she started crying, radiallahu anha. So he knew that, and he actually saw that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even after his death, what happened to his grandson. The Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved Al-Husayn so much. Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu himself was once sitting in front of the Kaaba, and he saw Al-Husayn coming, and he told the people around him that this person, and he's pointing out to Al-Husayn, this person is the more beloved people on earth to the people of the heaven. This is the most beloved one on earth to the people of the heaven. Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he's that great scholar, he would go and hold the camel or the horse for Al-Hasan Husayn to ride. And he would actually walk, grabbing the camel or the horse for them. And one person told him, you are older than them. Why would you do this? And you are Abdullah ibn Abbas. And Abdullah ibn Abbas got offended by this person telling him that. And he said, like, do you know who are those two? Those are the grandsons of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a ni'mah from Allah that I'm able to serve them. This is what he said, radiallahu anhu. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was attending a funeral once, and when they were coming back from the funeral, Al-Husayn had some dust and dirt on his clothes, and then Abu Hurairah started cleaning the garment of Al-Husayn, and Al-Husayn said, like, Ya Abu Hurairah, you do that and you are like Abu Hurairah, like you are this great companion and you are much older than me and stuff. So Abu Hurairah said, if wallahi people know about you what I know about you, they would have carried you on their shoulders. They didn't know your worth. They don't know who are you. This is the way that the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ viewed Al-Husayn. That's why this bloody day of the killing of Al-Husayn was something very painful to most of the companions, to all the companions of the Prophet ﷺ who attended it. They never forgot this day. Even Abdullah ibn Umar, and I read this hadith in last Monday when I was talking about Al-Hasan, he got upset when one man came from Iraq to ask him about the hukm of the mosquito's blood. And he said, subhanallah, you kill Al-Husayn and Al-Hasan, and now you're coming to ask about this little thing, right? The Sahaba never forgot that. Even towards the people of Iraq, they had this issue with the people of Iraq. Not, of course, that they are blaming all the country for that, but just like, it's just a painful memory that once you see Iraq, Kufa, and these cities, it was something painful for the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even Umar ibn al-Khattab, some people try to insinuate that Umar ibn al-Khattab didn't like Al-Husayn, right? And there was problems between Umar and Al-Husayn and the family of Ali radiallahu anhu, which is not, of course, correct. And the authentic traditions and narrations are against that. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu went once to Al-Husayn, and he's much, much older than Al-Husayn. And he said, my son, wallahi, all these blessings, this is the meaning of what he said, all these blessings that we are in, it's from Allah and through your barakah. And you doesn't mean only Husayn, he means his family, the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used a beautiful Arabic metaphor. He said, وَهَلْ أَنْبَتَ عَلَى رُؤُوسِنَا الشَّعْرَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ أَنْتُمْ. He said, the hair that is grown in our heads are growing only because of the number one, of course, the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and through means of your barakah as well. And you and your family, the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he placed his hand on the head of Al-Husayn, and he said, please try to come over more often, visit us more, and we need to see you more and talk to you more. And he used to send him the gifts, and he used to send all the companions gifts, and some of the companions would have certain salaries from the treasurer of the Khilafah at that time, and he would also give Al-Husayn specifically what would be enough for his life expenses, radiallahu anhu. So he had a lot of special occasions with Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu that imply how much he loved him. It's a long story, and we can go more and more about Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, about what happened, but I just want to conclude with how should we view this problem of the killing of Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, or the martyrdom of Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, of shahadat Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu. Number one, and I'm talking from the view of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu was a shaheed, was a martyr. He was killed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah view him, and even in the biographies they call him Al-Shaheed. So they call Abu Abdullah Al-Shaheed. This is his kunya, and this is his title, to be the shaheed radiallahu anhu. He was also oppressed, of course, and he was unjustly killed radiallahu anhu, right? He had right to ask for the Khilafah, and he had the right to express about this, and he had the right to show his opinion about this. All of these things, no one actually said Al-Husayn was wrong. And again, if you want to discuss this issue, you have to separate between two approaches. The approach of measuring the circumstances, right? The realistic, the political, the strategic circumstance of the situation of him leaving Mecca to revolt, basically, or to launch this opposition against the current regime. This is one side. And the other side, his worthiness of this position of the Khilafah or the Caliphate. There are two different things. Because again, almost all the Sahaba said, you are, or like they approved that he is more worthy of the Khilafah. He's more eligible. He's more qualified, 100%. Right? While on the other side, as we said already, the different attitudes of the Sahaba against what he did, that, yeah, probably you shouldn't do this because we don't think you're going to make it. So they were thinking more of the maslahah of the public and of Al-Husayn. Like they were just thinking of what is more beneficial to you personally to save your life and to save more bloodshed among Muslims. That was just their approach. So at this point, yeah, there's back and forth discussions among the Sahaba and even the scholars about should he actually, that was something that he should have done or not, right? And this is something that can be debatable and can be discussed. There's no problem about discussing that politically, strategically, realistically, of course. But thinking of Al-Husayn himself as one of the heroes of this ummah, as one of the shuhada of this ummah, there is no question about that. He was killed as a shaheed radiallahu anhu. He was oppressed and unjustly killed radiallahu anhu. As Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, وَقَتْلُ الْحُسَيْنِ مَعْصِيَةٌ لِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. He said his killing was ma'siyah, was a sin to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger. Not only the one who killed him, he said the one who killed him, the one who assisted in killing him, the one who was okay with Al-Husayn being killed. Even if like you didn't participate, just being okay with what happened to Al-Husayn, this is a sin. This is disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, وَهُوَ مُصِيبَةٌ. His killing was a disaster, was a calamity that afflicted Muslims, not only from his family, but all Muslims who were living at that time. He said, but to him it was martyrdom, was shahada. And he said, he suffered a lot in his life, and his brother did. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed a lot of thawab and reward for them, that's why he made them suffer a little bit in this life. He said, if you view the suffering they had in their lives, you can tell that, yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing a lot of reward for those people. One of them was poisoned to death, and the other one was killed, and their dad was killed as well. This family suffered a lot. Imam Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, I will conclude with this part. He said, كل مسلم ينبغي له أن يحزنه قتله رضي الله عنه. He said, every Muslim should feel sad about the killing of Al-Husayn رضي الله عنه. فإنه من سادات المسلمين. He's one of the chiefs of Muslims. He's one of the leaders of all Muslims. وعلماء الصحابة. Is one of the scholars of the companions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. And he's the grandson of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. وهو ابن بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He's the son of the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the best of his daughters. التي هي أفضل بناته. So all those privileges that he had, radiallahu anhu, and he was killed in this ugly, horrible way, unjustly. That's why every Muslim should feel sad about this. And when we say every Muslim should feel sad about this, this does not mean we have to make an event in which we show certain practices that shows sadness, sorrow, sometimes worse. Sometimes it's madness, not actually sadness about what happened to Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu. Yes, we feel pain for that. Yes, we feel, how do we belong to Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu? We feel his just cause that he was actually fighting for. We feel that probably if Al-Husayn would have become the Khalifa, things would have been much better for the history of this ummah, probably, or at least for this period of the ummah. Allahu a'lam. But again, he's one of the best characters of the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a person that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you love him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill our hearts with the love to Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, and to Al-Hasan, his brother, and to all the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send his blessings and greetings upon all the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us follow their footsteps. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us able to understand and to follow the haqq, and to show us the haqq, and to make us follow the haqq subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma arina al-haqq haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ahu. We ask Allah to show us the batil and to enable us to avoid it. Wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabahu ya rabbal alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.